Yesterday was a hot mess. I'll just sum it up like that.
All right, good evening, welcome. This is the Ways and Means Committee, 6 p.m. Tuesday, August 17th. Cole, let's start off with a roll call, please.
Councilmember Popson.
Here.
Councilmember Streetman.
Here.
Councilmember Moore. Councilmember Ward.
Here.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Here.
Councilmember Bell.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Mayor Carroll.
Here.
Councilmember Pounds.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that the press and public have been duly notified of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. Second item is approval of previous meetings minutes from July 20, 2021. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second, thank you, Mayor. Any changes, comments, edits? Nicole?
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. Next item, we don't have any citizens' comments, but we do have a presentation from Davis and Floyd, which is an item later in our agenda. But being the nice people that we are, we won't make him sit around for the whole thing. So we'll let him go ahead and do his presentation.
I'll just go ahead and introduce Ryan Phillips. He's a senior engineer with Davis and Floyd. As you all know, the city issued an RFP for the engineering services for the drainage master plan island-wide, and the Planning Commission interviewed 3 companies out of the 5 that submitted a proposal and selected Davis and Floyd to move forward and discuss pricing and receive a proposal. So the Planning Commission was supposed to meet tomorrow, as you all know, because of the COVID issues we've had with the building department. That has been delayed until next week. And we expect before City Council to have a recommendation from the Planning Commission. They've heard this presentation, they've had an opportunity to talk to these folks, and we wanted you all as the Ways and Means Committee to have the same opportunity to hear the presentation before you all finalize the vote, engaging those services, and have an opportunity to ask questions. So with that,
Jimmy?
I think for the record, we probably need to, I'll make a motion to suspend the rules of order to hear from new business item 7B.
We're not going to vote on it, but we're just going to have a presentation, but that's fine. Mayor, were you seconding?
Yeah.
We're moving, we're making a motion to move it to what, right after his presentation?
No, not a vote.
No,
We're
no,
just,
we're
we're just
doing-
moving
We're
up.
just allowing this.
We're changing the agenda.
Oh, okay. I was just trying to understand what he was doing. Okay. Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. All right, take it away. You got a presentation we want you
Yep.
to put up?
Don't want y'all to have to look at me the whole time, so
We don't want to see water flowing out the back of the aisle.
hopefully it didn't flow too bad today, but thanks Desiree and Douglas. I know he's not with us, but glad to be here and present. I took out all the boring stuff, so I try to condense it down. I'm just going to briefly cover what we proposed and what the city has proposed to do as far as the project, and then moving forward, we know that drainage is important. Barrier islands are a key part of our community down here, especially Isle of Palms being right here in neighborhood Mount Pleasant where I live. Come here all the time, so we know the importance of having good drainage. So we're happy to be able to help solve some of those problems. So just a real quick recap. Douglas said that y'all may or may not be fully aware of all of the details of the actual RFQ. So there's really 2 parts of the RFQ. The first part is focusing on a full master plan for phase 4 of the island over towards Breach Inlet. So there hasn't been any drainage work to date other than a little bit of work from Charleston County. So that area, we want to get out there and perform field survey, do conditions assessments, see if there's any maintenance items and really nail down on what we can do to fix the drainage, make recommendations, perform some cost estimates, get input from the city, and then hopefully get some funding and actually fix the plan. So that's really step one. And then step two, or phase two of this project, is to kind of step back after we finish the phase 4 master plan, look at the whole island holistically, and just really come up with a capital improvement plan for the next 10 years moving forward. We know that y'all want to fix all flooding by in the next 10 years. We know that Hurricane Joaquin was a big issue. So again, just taking that step back, putting in and implementing a full capital improvement plan, and then actually getting the funding and building those projects. So in a nutshell, that's the big picture. If we move on to the next slide, I'll just walk through some of those steps. We do have some data from Charleston County through the MS4 program that Alpha's is part of. They have some information, at least where things stand, but they don't really have, you know, elevations or materials. Some of that data is missing. So what we'll do is actually start off by taking that data, putting it into GIS. Not sure if many of y'all are familiar with GIS, but GIS makes things easy. Put it out on the cloud, send some guys in the field. Voila, we're collecting data, kind of streamline that whole process, and it actually allows the city and residents to actually see what we're doing and keep up to date. So you can, you know, I can sit behind my desk and spy on the folks in the field, make sure they're actually working. Next slide.
May I ask a question before you
Yep.
leave that slide? Can we go back that one slide? So that's Second Avenue. And if you get down to the very 100 block where my office used to be located, I say used to because it's no longer my office. That street where Carolina feeds out right there, that's like a lake down here. So I'm sure y'all have that data for down there too.
Yep. And we'll be taking the data that we already have,
Right.
and we'll be supplementing. So we're going to go out and survey it
Okay,
and collect more data. So we're not just going to rely on what's already been provided. We're going
okay,
to check it, augment it, and then get even more. So,
great, thank you.
and hopefully get rid of your lake. And then, you know, with drainage, we've got to do some type of computer model or some hydraulic calculations and actually figure out how much flooding is taking place and how much we need to mitigate. And one thing in particular on this one is that the goal is to fix all of the flooding or essentially any houses that would have flooded during Hurricane Joaquin, eliminate that entirely. We know that a lot of houses may or may not have been damaged. A lot of them are elevated, but there are some houses that are still built before the NFIP program. And so it's questionable. And here's just a quick schematic of some preliminary modeling we did, just showing the depth of flooding and the color scale here. And then just, again, high level, take some of these houses and evaluate the level of flooding around those houses. And that really helps us hone in on where do we really need to focus, where are the problems, and maybe we might not need to, you know, the houses in these black colors less than 3 inches, maybe we don't need to spend a lot of money and focus our attention there. We really want to get the most bang for our buck and really fix flooding and do it cost effectively. So again, taking all this data in and just holistically looking at it and being intelligent about where we recommend improvement. So just a quick snapshot of one little area. Some questions came up in the interview. Don't worry, that was not included in this. So this is just a snapshot of one little area.
But that area I was telling you about, you've got it marked beautifully.
Yeah. So it's tricky too. I mean, you look at, you drive out there, I mean, yeah, it's a bowl. So next slide. So, you know, we figure out how much is flooding. Now we want to fix the flooding, and it's tricky. You know, there's not a lot of space. It's been developed a lot. There's right of ways, private property, county-owned property, city-owned property. And so we're going to really take all that into account and see what our options are. I know that Thompson Hutton's working on some of the phase 3 projects, upsizing the piping, adding outfalls. So that's absolutely an option. We want to get the water to the ocean as quick as possible a lot of the times. But on a micro level, there may be some options to, you know, implement some green infrastructure with some sidewalk projects. or other capital improvement projects that you may already be planning to do, and we can really get a dual benefit, walkability, maybe parking, and implementing some drainage improvements with that. And so again, trying to get those win-win situations and not just focus only on drainage, but try to that dual purpose benefit. So a couple of folks asked, we've had some experience with underground detention when there's not enough room available. This is actually Home Depot. You won't see any ponds or anything. All the drainage is underneath the parking lot. That is an option. We're working with Edisto Beach to maybe put that underneath some city-owned or town-owned facilities. DOT is not going to allow that. But if it is county or a city-owned road or facility, we could absolutely entertain that as an option. But again, we're going to, look at the level of flooding, look at the cost, look at the benefit, and then make a decision from there. So, next slide. From the master plan, we're going to be able to, again, provide you some information on the existing maintenance. This is a real quick rendering. Green is good. There's no clogging in the pipelines. And then maybe there's some areas, trunk lines that are clogged. Again, that's part of the field assessments. We go out with tablets and we take pictures. Does DOT need to come out here and maintain it? It may not be that you need a new pipeline. It may just be DOT needs to come clean the pipe. And so looking at that maintenance perspective, and then there may be options. This is an example out of Joint Base Charleston, working with them to develop a shopping list of recommended improvements and trying to rank those from a low, medium, high priority, and then have that shopping list with cost estimates to be able to seek additional funding and help form the capital improvement plan. And so town of Sherall actually grew up there, so it's interesting to be able to go back and try to help them. They don't have a lot of money. And so we're actually taking into account the depth of flooding and the time of flooding and trying to actually weight those and really prioritize where they need to spend money because they just don't have a lot of money. So again, focusing more on the planning, and then we can get money and go to design. So next slide.
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, and Desiree, correct me if I'm wrong or not, but we've had a lot of great conversations with SCDOT over the last 2 years. And we were told that the drainage pipes that were installed down Palm Boulevard, Cameron, the avenues, were really installed to get the water off the roads, and that's it. They really weren't installed knowing that all Palms is going to be developed by these huge houses nowadays. So the pipes are probably geared towards, back when I was growing up, almost a barrier island, no houses. And so we're being overrun. Luckily, we've done a lot of great things in the last couple of years where we've increased lot sizes. We've decreased the size of houses going on there. We're having people put in pervious driveways, sidewalks, unfull surrounds. So we are being proactive, but the pipes, I think, are so undersized for what's happened over the last 50 years. Just to keep in mind.
Yep.
Lifelong perspective.
And they were probably put in without a lot of design standards. That's what we see in some
Hardly
places.
any at all.
Got the pipe
Without
in the
the-
yard, throw in the hole, and
Right.
and there's cost share options. I'm sure y'all talk with DOT. They may not have money. They say they don't have money, but we work with DOT a lot, and it can certainly help facilitate those conversations. Drainage has become a big issue for them, so they're trying to be a little more proactive. It's just
For everybody. Thank you.
so once we wrap up the phase 4 area master plan, the second part is to look at the whole island and review some of the previous projects, review areas that have repetitive flooding, and just provide value engineering. I know Waterway Boulevard is an example that was asked to maybe look at. I know there's talks of elevating that, but could you actually put in infiltration trenches and maybe do some type of green infrastructure and some minimal piping and tie that with some pedestrian improvements, and then maybe not have to do rigid hard infrastructure to alleviate flooding in that area. So part of it, we'll just be looking at bringing our planners in, bringing our senior engineers in, and just, again, reviewing some of the projects. And it may be that, you know, everything's good as it can get, and there's no extra bang for the buck, but again, trying to provide a third-party review of some of the previous projects that have been recommended. And get our landscape architects involved. This is actually West Indian, some permeable walkways and pathways out on Folly Beach that Chris Haynes and his group has been working on. So we work with our landscape architects and engineers to try to come up with these solutions. Next slide.
I have a question. So are we talking about officially putting Waterway into all of this? Or is that just an example?
An example.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know Thomas and Hutton is looking at it. And
That's
I
what
think
thought.
our role would just be to provide them maybe a third-party review,
Okay,
you know, not duplicate their work or
Mhm.
anyone else's work, but just maybe
Good.
help provide another perspective.
my concern would be that we are keep
Yep.
pushing it down the path.
So the big one is we can come up with plans, we can come up with solutions, but we've got to get money to build it. And so a piece of that is actually bringing in Catherine Hendricks. She wasn't able to join us here today, but she's former assistant town manager for Town of Mount Pleasant. She works with us now, in particular me, helping to try to find funding for governments. And so we work closely with EMD at the State House Disaster Recovery Office. There's a lot of HUD funding available right now. Charleston County is luckily in that pot of money. So there's a lot of options out there, and we want to help get you money to fix the flooding. If we can't do that, then honestly, we're wasting your time. So funding deadlines are approaching in October and December for FEMA and the DRO. The HUD funding is a great source. They've got to spend $157 million over the next 10 years. It's emergency-based or LMI-based. LMI gets a little tricky, but City of Charleston has been able to fund some of the drop structures and tunnel systems that we're working on with them through that program. So, and that's managed by the state. So that's a great source of money. So again, find money to fix flooding. Next slide. Again, another piece of this is maintenance. I was actually really impressed with Isle of Palms. Y'all do have a regular maintenance schedule and actually clean ditches. I know y'all are working with ED's construction to do a lot of that work. So again, one of the tasks they want us to look at is maybe optimizing a maintenance schedule and just looking over that and coming up with recommendations. Could be that once we get all of the data and we look at the hydraulic models, maybe that actually cleaning the ditches doesn't really help flooding. So maybe you may be able to cut back, and maybe you don't want to cut back from an aesthetic point of view. So trying to look at that more from a performance-based maintenance schedule rather than just every year go out there and reshape the ditch. Or I think y'all do every 3 years, you reshape ditches, generally cut it every year. So again, trying to look at the performance, but there is the people component and aesthetics. So I have a ditch behind my house, so I'm very familiar with that. Next slide. Mayor mentioned development regulations. That's another piece of the puzzle. Again, looking at a third-party perspective, maybe helping work with the planning department on special protection areas. Maybe there's portions of the island that are just really overwhelmed and can't handle any more drainage, you know, from an infiltration standpoint. So maybe you want to cap impervious coverages in those areas. Maybe you want to do that across the whole island. Again, part of our job is going to be to provide you an engineering perspective and help facilitate those discussions, you know, from a science standpoint, and then work with the city to do the regulation. We're not going to write your laws. We're going to give you some options and opinions, but you know, you're part of this puzzle too. So we're going to be working hand in hand with y'all to come up with that. Other things, I mean, you know, plan review. I'm not entirely sure with how how the island does plan or review for development. There's other communities that have focused on areas that maybe are flood prone or more flood prone than others. They do require a licensed engineer to actually sign off on the drainage plan. So again, just throwing out some examples here. And the last might be, by implementing some of those, you can get higher ratings and get better insurance premiums for NFIP. So try to save money for everybody. Hopefully not make too many people angry. So, next slide. This is a summary cost breakdown, and the packet is a very detailed, complicated man-hour analysis by task classification. But again, I broke it down into the master plan. That's for the phase 4 area, doing the survey, doing the analysis, doing the modeling, coming up with recommendations, conceptual designs, going back and forth with the city. Again, maybe we need to do some renderings and planning for sidewalks or other improvement projects. And then once we finish that, looking back at the island-wide, holistic view, capital improvement projects, that line item is again doing value engineering and capital planning. So actually picking out all of the projects and setting in stone and working with the city to actually, here's the CIP for the next 10 years. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to spend the money and make everything come to fruition. Maintenance review, that's pretty self-explanatory, but again, just working with the maintenance staff and seeing if we can help them review their schedules and maintenance task orders and how they manage everything, and then maybe give recommendations. Maybe even bring EEs in since they're doing a lot of work. What's cost effective? Are there other options that they can do? And then development recommendations is the last item. For the core RFQ as released by the city. And then if anyone's a doctor or goes to the doctor, I always like to recommend, I'm a hydrologist. I mean, you're not going to get open heart surgery without having some tests done and collect some data. So I did, mention to Douglas, this rainfall water level monitoring, that's an optional task. Take it, leave it, but putting rain gauges out, putting some stage gauges, validating the model. The big thing with me is, we may design to a standard. That standard may be conservative and maybe spending more money than we need to. So if we can put out some gauges and really understand what's going on, you may be able to save money and actually do some other projects. So again, just did want to mention that it's completely optional, but if you like getting your feet wet and getting in the field, happy to do some of that work. So with that, I think the last slide is the schedule. One thing I will note is that talking with Douglas, he did want me to just price everything and kind of break it out so that we could do each one of those line items as a separate task order and project. So, if for whatever reason we wanted to hit pause and stop, everything will be memorialized and everything will be documented. So it'd be completely up to the city whether you wanted to issue a full one big contract or you want to go line by line. But that was kind of the intent. And then approximately 12 months, I think we could speed that up. But again, we do want to get y'all's input, and this is the capital plan for the next 10 years. So I don't want to rush anything, put it in writing. And
Philip, quick question. I mean, doing this in pieces, I understand the pricing, but it's not pragmatic to think that you could stop and do a handoff to somebody else, right? So once you embark on the journey, you're kind of on the journey, I would think.
Yeah, the real key would be if we wanted to do all the existing conditions and the phase 4 area, and then hit pause for 3 months, and then have the city have a little more time than normal, than 2 weeks to review stuff. So that was the intent.
Yeah, but I mean, basically, if we're getting married on this, we're getting married.
Yep.
Going all the way to the altar. Yeah.
And hopefully on the honeymoon.
Thank you.
I'm I'm not gonna hold you to this, but I'm gonna hold you to this. We've got over 1,400 houses on septic tanks. And that phase 4 is gonna be from above 30th going down to Breach. And 25th Avenue is a huge, it's like 41st Avenue. And it is in the center of the island where basically all our septic tanks. And the water comes up from Waterway all the way up to Waterway Boulevard. What's more important, putting our houses on sewage or getting the water off the island? That's my $1 million question.
Say both.
What's first, the egg or the chicken?
Well, short term, it's probably easier to get the water off the island.
Thank you.
Yeah. And one we have more control over than the other.
Yes.
I just want to hear you say that.
But I don't know,
I'll send you.
yeah. Have y'all worked with EPA to try to get funding to DHEC cool people off septic? Yeah,
It's hard.
yeah.
We don't have the infrastructure for it, but that's another topic though.
Long one.
It's a long one.
Any other questions? Trick questions?
Sorry about that.
Yeah, there's a difference, even though I'm not an expert, but just from personal observation. Some homes are more affected by rainfall, some are more at risk because of tidal flooding, some it's a combination. I mean, will you be distinguishing along those lines? And I mean, in terms of the risk factors for different areas. And I mean, I do like the idea of what you were saying, starting to gather data to see how things are changing. I think that could be very informative for the future.
Yeah,
So I think
that
that's,
slide is actually hidden because don't want to bore anybody, but sea level rise, there's talk of climate change and really just from the increased rainfall depths. Work with a lot of folks at USC and Clemson. There is that data available on that. And that is something we're going to look at is there a risk, further risk, so you've got today's scenario and then 50 years down the road, is the risk really going to change? So yes, tidal and surge and sea level rise and then also the increased rainfall is definitely a big piece of the puzzle. And also, what's a realistic storm? Like Hurricane Joaquin, just the rainfall might not be that bad, but what if that happened with a pretty high tide? So look at those different scenarios.
when with the big rain, the 1,000-year rain or whatever it was, you could tell there was a different impact than in my backyard, actually. So, I'm just curious to know and see that distinction. I think some of the homes, and plus too, the homes that are near ditches also are at risk at certain times, and I'm not even sure why, but sometimes those ditches are more likely to overflow, and it seems connected to rainfall, but that's just purely anecdotal on my part.
Hopefully that didn't bore anyone. If y'all want to talk hydrology or have other questions.
I was just looking for an article that I copied from the Post and Courier about a year and a half ago. And this said basically the number of flooding events is growing proportionally. Where we're gonna have almost half a year of flooding events here in Charleston. And I spent last week down in Charleston, I was looking at the low battery being raised up and I was looking at sidewalks, Susan. You won't believe the sidewalks in Charleston. They're horrible.
Oh, yeah.
But it's like the crosstown. They did the crosstown. It's beautiful. And the pipes.
That'll be fixed
I know it's coming.
very, very soon.
Very soon. Everybody's gonna be happy.
Yeah.
We can hardly wait for that one, for those of us who go downtown.
Kevin.
They're gonna buy pumps.
Kevin, go ahead.
So looking at your schedule, you're starting on the 7th, September 7th, and you're finishing about a year later. So assuming all the scopes stay the same and we don't get in your way, this 248,000 is a firm price,
Yes. No,
no surprises.
no surprises.
And even if the schedule lags, maybe from your end.
Yeah.
Okay.
No changes.
Second question is, last item is submit final package to county. What is that for? MS4 letter or?
No, that should be city.
Oh,
That's me.
okay, got it. I didn't know why we were going to the county. Okay,
It'd be
thank
nice
you.
if the county would pay for some.
Yeah, hey, Ryan, I got a question. Douglas, this may really be for you. So when you go back to one of your earlier slides, and when I read your quote and how you guys answered the RFP, I know the initial focus is 29th to breach. So that phase 4 area, a lot of detail, a lot of analysis, a lot of field work. But that phase 3 area, all we're doing, and I know you guys know this, is, the 3 outfalls. We haven't looked at the infrastructure to get us from edge of the island to that outfall. I mean, is that part of this?
That's correct. Yeah. So when Thomas and Hutton. Plus that for not being profit. We had a certain amount of money for the small, what we call small, high impact projects. We had kind of a certain amount of money that we had to tailor those projects around. So what we did on the inside of that basin here in the past year was very much tailored to the amount of money we had. So part of what they will be doing is going back, kind of a fresh look at how that basin stands after the outfalls were done and after the projects we just did or completed, to see what in addition really to get us to a state of completion where everything is tended to, we don't have, unfavorable conditions after a storm. What will that take? And then kind of ultimately it builds this grocery list of projects for the next 10 years and prioritizes them and hopefully does them in a systematic, methodical way that makes sense and, put the money in and get them done piece by piece. But yes, they will be going back into that basin particularly and also, up from 41st. Yeah, we were talking today that we are kind of having issues pop up in that area because some of those projects are now 10 years old maybe. So it's going to be a holistic look at the whole island after the detailed analysis.
Just one thing, the Thomas and Hutton list that we're using to identify the small internal projects has a total of about 8 to 10 projects. We selected the 5 that we just completed, but the plan is for this year to pursue additional projects that have already been identified that will tie to those outfalls. So that chunk of work is still not complete. We're just kind of working within the 500,000 that we're budgeting every year that we started this year. So we'll be pursuing, I think, 3 more this fiscal year.
That's right. And part of our challenge as a staff, we start getting not fixated, but we start focusing on an area, literally a geographic area like this basin that we're currently working in. And the question comes up, Mayor Carroll was asking about Second and Charleston. If we're over there kind of polishing and fine tuning one basin, but maybe you have a far worse issue that's over,
Forest Trail.
yeah, somewhere else that you're kind of focusing on one place where really you need to have kind of a baseline approach of, okay, this is the worst, this is kind of the low hanging fruit. We're going to go at this. So really put a little bit better order to our drainage work than what we're currently using.
So Ryan, what we're talking about increasing lot sizes and stuff really had to do with the Forest Trail area, which took 3 lots, made them 5 lots. And that whole area was a swamp as a kid. That JC came and pulled sand off the beach, filled it in. It's now sunk. And it really fills up all the time. And houses are flooded, the yards are flooded, and they're all in septic tanks.
Don't scare them off.
Nobody needs to have a reality check.
Ryan, I got a question about you mentioned HUD funding and
Yes, sir.
some of those funds that are available. Who does the heavy lifting on that? Do you all run interference on that, or is that something we do?
So the city would make the application. We could certainly help with cost benefit analyses. the scope of work, the exhibits that go along with that. Some folks have grant writers on staff, and then we also can do the work ourselves to actually get those applications to the door.
And that would be for an additional fee if you had to do the grant writing.
Well, maybe not. I mean, we'll have a lot of the information already there. You know, we'll have the cost there, we'll have the level of flooding and the flood reduction, so we'll have mapping. I mean, and even if it is an extra fee, it wouldn't be much.
We've heard that before.
And with that type of work, we don't do lump sum.
Right.
We do like cost plus hourly basis, and then we do have some other folks that we partner with that literally only do grant writing, some sub-consultants that are much cheaper than we are, and have a low overhead rate, and so we can offer those to y'all to work directly with them, and then we just feed them with information. A lot of times I do scopes and stuff free, because I would have to do it for free anyways. I mean, I'm not getting paid to do some of this work, and so we have to do it anyway.
Well, I didn't intentionally try to trap you like the mayor did, but I think you did a pretty good job of getting out of it.
Don't let my boss see this video.
Hey, Douglas, just so you know, I was bragging on you while you were away about lot sizes and decreasing.
I was listening.
Okay.
Then you know that's not true.
Yeah.
All right, we need to keep moving. Douglas, anything else? Ryan, anything else?
Not for me.
Awesome. Thank you guys for your bidding and help.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, Debbie, let's keep moving. Do financial statements.
All
please.
right. This can go pretty quickly. I wanted to touch back on FY21, so the first item. And John, that's it, right there.
And Debbie will tell you next, right?
Yeah, I'll try to remember. Pinch me. Okay, so the auditors were on site last week. They wrapped up their field work. They're now working out of their office. So the goal is still to present audited financial statements at the October meeting. We are on hold with final numbers pending the receipt of 3 relatively big payments: the local option sales tax related to June sales, the county pass-through that was approved, but we have not yet received, that's $508,000. And then the broker license fees that are collected by MASC, and that's a 6-figure number. So we're still waiting on those 3 revenue streams. They are included in the forecast column here. And the general fund items, which would be the broker's fees and the local option sales tax, are included in our estimate of what we think revenues, general fund revenues in excess of general fund expenses, the $2.271 million that we'll be discussing later on in the meeting. No more expenses are anticipated. The auditors are going to propose one adjustment. The bulkhead recoding in the Marina, I had recorded that as an expense because it was kind of like paint in my mind. But it, of course, is a $700,000 expense. And the question I received was, did we expect it to lengthen the useful life of the bulkhead? And of course we do. We wouldn't have done it otherwise. And another question was, do you have to do it every year? And the answer is no, it's not something we have to do every year. So we're going to reclass that out of expense onto the balance sheet as part of the bulkhead asset, and then depreciate it over the life, the remaining life of the bulkhead. So that will actually improve the Marina revenue versus expense calculation. Any questions on that?
Jim?
What's the useful life?
So I think the original useful life on the bulkhead was 30 years. So I guess I will have to reach out to Kirby and see how long he thinks that the the recoding will prolong that. Or if he just thinks it will allow us to get to 30 years where before maybe we.
I think that's the case.
I think I know that's the case.
Yeah.
That's the maintenance of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll go over over it with the auditors. Seems like an awful long time. Wish me in saltwater. Thanks.
Okay. For July, next slide. Yes. One more. There we go. So 1 month into the FY22 fiscal year, not a whole lot to talk about. Very little activity. Most of what is collected in July is actually accrued into FY21 and was included on the previous slides. What is happening in July on the general fund side would relate to rental licenses. We are going through renewals for rental licenses and parking. Then on the expense side, normal operating expenses, salaries, utilities, fuel, all the departments are within their budget target of 8%, with the exception of the BSO line item, and that's just due to the timing of when those folks work. Next page. Briefly, cash, $25.7 million in the bank, 24 of that at the LGIP, earning 0.1104%, and about $1.6 million at locally at BB&T. $8 million of that total is restricted. Next page. Okay. This is the first time we've been able to present to you a full FY21 worth of muni A-tax. You can see that the July payment related to June heads and beds was substantial, $256,000 for the month. So we're 53% ahead of FY20, which was of course abnormally low due to COVID, but 26% ahead of FY19 pre-COVID. And you can see where we had budgeted FY21, that dark gray column. Our very conservative budget for FY21 was $787,000. So we beat that. And just for kind of comparison, the FY22 budget for this revenue stream is 1.264. So we're not even budgeting what we actually received in FY21.
So Debbie, I mean, do you feel like we should be starting to, at what point would you rethink our FY22? Would you?
Up or down? I think.
I mean, if it's going to be dramatically over again.
Oh, I don't think it, I think it's possible that it might not be, just
Okay.
because the pent-up demand might have pushed
Okay.
through.
So you feel like it's still realistic or
I do.
pragmatic?
Mr. Chair. I agree with Debbie 1,000%. I think we're getting drunk on this amount of money that's coming in here, both in rentals and in construction. It's not going to last. And we need to be very conservative looking into the future. I mean, I see people get huge amounts of money for rentals right now they never got before. But when people start traveling again, it's probably going to be another year out. You know, we're going to be conservative. And Debbie, I commend you for what you've done for the last several years.
Well, thank you. I would say that 1.2 is not very conservative when you look at our history, but that FY22 budget specifically addressed the new Waldoons Hotel and captured some new money associated with that project. So that's kind of how we got to 1.2, given our historic numbers prior to COVID. So we'll see. Next page, state aid tax. Again, following the trend with the municipal, and they should be right in step with each other. 45% ahead of FY20 and 22% ahead of FY19. The county pass-through has not been received. It's not included here, but county council did vote to approve those payments, so we are expecting to see it. If the timing is such that we don't have it by when we pull the trigger on the audited financials for FY21, it will just be an unbudgeted revenue in FY22. Okay, hospitality tax. So June and July hospitality tax were the two biggest months in hospitality tax we've ever had. So although earlier in FY21, that revenue stream was depressed due to COVID, it has rebounded significantly this summer. We're still 8% behind where we were in FY19, but 21% ahead of FY20. The budget for this revenue stream in FY22 is $830,000. Okay, beach preservation fee, I'm going to skip because it mirrors muni A tax. Local option sales tax. This is one of the items that this schedule is not complete because we're still missing the July payment. The forecast that I included in the numbers for FY21 was $105,000. I think we'll easily make that for the July payment. But it is in total running 12% ahead of FY20 and 4% ahead of FY19 before that last payment. Any questions so far? We'll go into project worksheets. I've tried to update both of these with the FY22 budgets, added some notes on where the funding is coming from. So drainage phase 3 is funded with capital projects and muni A tax funds, a $3.5 million GEO bond, and $112,532 plan from NPDES funds. This shows the change order for Thomas and Hutton for the bidding and construction admin for 30th and 36th outfalls. No significant new spending on the construction of the internal projects. The last bill we've received is the one for June 1st, 2021. So we'll have some coming in the next month or so. Next project worksheet is the Marina dock replacement. Again, the funding notes are funded with accommodations taxes, and that's state accommodations taxes, Marina revenues, and a $4.3 million GEO bond. You can see that in the gray box spending in FY19, FY20, and FY21. And then the forecast in FY22 for the completion of the dock and the recode. So we are right on target between where we expected to be and what's been contracted. There is a $285,000 worth of unidentified contingency still in this project too. So that's good news. Moving right along. Legal expenses. So FY21, that's a complete number for the full fiscal year. And then I'm just adding on FY22 year to date. And then sorted by largest to smallest expense. And that is all I have.
Other questions on the statements? Debbie, thank you very much, as always. We'll move to item 5, Desiree, capital projects report.
I tried to wait.
I know Amy's glad she's not
Oh,
sitting
man,
back here.
a lot of presentations tonight.
Amy, you hear me?
All right. Okay, we'll go through the slides like we've done in the past couple of months. We'll start with the Marina restaurant renovation, a couple of good updates here. They have structurally fixed all the joists of the first floor and under the building. All those have been repaired. They've completed wrapping up the interior wall and all the floor framing. They're working on strapping the 2-story deck and the new bar and cable rail system. The plumbing routers are pretty much almost complete throughout the building, and it's complete for the electrical and just the first floor. The new fire sprinkler plans are due today. We had an update call this around noon, and they confirmed that they are expecting that by the end of the day today or tomorrow at the latest, I believe. All HVAC units have been ordered, and ductwork installation work is scheduled for the end of this month. The new metal roofing at the dining room is complete, and the membrane roof at the lower mechanical area is scheduled for replacement at the end of this month as well. Their completion date is late this year, early 2022. They actually believe that they might be completed in December, but will probably not open until after the holidays. So that's good news. We have requested an additional proposal for the work that we are contractually obligated to perform in the section of docks that they're renting along the intercoastal. Blue Tie Construction is the contractor that we have engaged to do the parking lot improvement work. And they do work in marinas in the area, and they're pretty good at it. So we are waiting on a proposal from them, hopefully this week, so that they can maybe hopefully perform the work after they conduct the work in the parking lot, which is scheduled between the window of August 20th and September 20th, which is consistent. We're working and coordinating this with Salmons to make sure that this work happens when they're not working on site, so that we can minimize the disruption for the marina operations. We'll move forward to the next.
Can I say something real quickly?
Sure.
I met John and Dave down there last week and took a tour of the building. They really have made some amazing progress down there, and it's really starting to get some real momentum. And even with this update here, I think there's been a lot done in the last couple of days as well. So I think Kevin might have noticed some of that as well.
Yeah, they're definitely building this building right.
Yeah, we're excited to see it to be completed. We also had our meeting this today at noon with our owner's representative as well, who's visiting the site every week and just conducting inspections of all the work on our behalf. So those meetings and inspections are happening, are ongoing as well. The next slide, the Marina Dock Rehabilitation Project. We have a punch list inspection scheduled for tomorrow morning. We'll be there with the marina manager, Tyler, the dock master, ATM, the contractor, and myself. Will be walking through the docks and identifying final punch list items before the docks are turned over to Brian. The portable water system is not yet fully connected or tested. The subcontractor is having manpower issues, just like we're seeing across the board, being able to secure staffing for some of this work. The fire suppression is almost complete. The final bracing of the standpipes and the pressure testing is pending. One of the conversations we'll have tomorrow is, are there any things that can be completed, some of these punch list items that can be completed after we turn it over to Brian. Certainly would reduce the impact of his inability to use this space and us moving forward with a demo of the charter docs. So that's one of the things that we'll be considering in our meeting tomorrow. The dock area B, which is the charter docks, will be demoed after the restaurant and face docks are fully functional and turned over to Brian for use. All major materials are on site at the Salmon's shipyard. There are some minor things in the gangways and some minor materials that are haven't yet been delivered, but everything that they would need to start building them on site is here, which is good news. The dock area A, ATM has received another submittal from for the fuel dock from Structure Marine that they're reviewing. The fuel hut construction contractor has reviewed the final design plans for the fuel hut and provided updated price for the approved amount. We have a meeting scheduled this week to go the updated pricing and identifies any items that would need to be adjusted. I have informed the contractor and ATM that the city will not consider any change orders or any additional amounts for the fuel HUD. City Council, as you all know, approved an amount of 130. Brian is paying for 36, about 36,000. So anything above and beyond what it takes for us to build it for like, Brian is paying. So we'll be meeting and identifying, are there any design elements that Brian wants that he would pay for, but certainly our component of the funding, not entertaining changing that from what's already been approved.
Desiree, I have a question. I'm not sure if this is directly related, but some questions that come up on social media about pump out service for boat waste. And can you speak to that and if that situation is being fixed?
Yes, so the pump out system started malfunctioning last November. At that time, the schedule for replacement, as you all know, the project contemplates replacing and putting a new pump out system on the docks. The construction schedule at that time had us finishing this project in late spring, early summer. So the Marina manager has been sort of fixing it and putting Band-Aids to the system to continue to make it operational. When the project was delayed and we fully understood the delays with the manufacturer and everything that we've already discussed, Brian ordered a new motor, just knowing that we may not be able to, do a hodgepodge and continue to Band-Aid and fix it. He ordered one, but it's been back ordered, just like we've seen with all the issues with materials. So he indicated to me that in the past year, they've had to fix it, more than 5 times. So that's a reason why it's down. It's sporadic. They do their best at trying to fix it and get it functional. Because of the project schedule, the Marina hasn't been taking any transients, which are the folks that typically use that service. So that hasn't been in place. We don't allow any liveaboards, so there's not people spending the night there. There is one tenant of his that does use that system, and he has secured other ways to use a different pump out. So it's certainly not ideal, but we are funding the replacement through the Clean Vessel Act. We received a grant for that portion. But just unfortunately, with all the delays, that portion of the project hasn't yet been completed, which was not contemplated in November.
Thank you.
You're
for
welcome.
that.
Desiree, is that the DHEC funding that we'll get for the new system? Is it DHEC?
It's the state, it's through the state.
Yeah.
Yes,
I think it's DHEC.
yes, it is.
Basically.
It's DHEC.
Do we get, is that 75, covered up to 75%? I did some research on that, so that's significant there.
Yes, I don't have the
Recouping the
exact
cost.
figure in my head.
Well, it's up to 75, so it may be less than that. I'm not real sure, but once it's
Yes.
approved.
So
Okay.
we'll- yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, the pump out would be down on dock A.
Correct.
So that's gonna be the last thing we do. The other question is, Solomon's, I'm sure is not qualified to be installing fire suppressant systems on docks. Are we having like Johnson and Johnson or something like that do those, or a third party?
It would be a subcontractor.
Uh-huh.
They are coordinating and will be coordinating a meeting with the fire department
Okay, yeah.
to get them, walk them through the whole system,
Right,
test
right.
it out and do all that. That's something that's,
I
will
know
be done.
Travis likes to look at details.
And something I failed to mention, Susan, to your question, the new motor came in on Friday and it's scheduled to be installed this week. So the pump out should be fixed and should be operation until we're ready to have it replaced.
That's great. And I appreciate that it maybe hasn't been an issue because of the reasons that you,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, great.
All right, you're welcome. All right, next slide. Phase 3 drainage. We have received the full permits for Forest Trail. There's one component that's missing that will trigger the county permit and the SCDOT permit. The Army Corps has notified Thomas and Hutton that that permit should be coming this month in August. So cross your fingers. The one thing with mitigation that I'm adding from the last slide is that they have indicated that OCRM has indicated that they are requiring, will likely require the city to mitigate a portion of the 30th Avenue outfall. This is the outfall that we're piping. There's one that the one of Forest Trail will remain open. This is a portion that we're piping on 30th Avenue. So they're asking us to mitigate for that. The expense of that, it's approximately between $20,000 and $25,000 that were not contemplated early on that now we do have to contemplate. We're working through with that. We might, we're in discussions about how ready would we be to start construction on the 30th outfall this winter. What we're going to do, what the plan is to include it in the bid documents with 36th Avenue, with the 36th Avenue Forest Trail outfall as an alternate, pending permits. If we get the permits by the end of this year, and we can, it'll be beneficial because we'll at least have a pricing that we can use for planning purposes. As you all know, 41st Avenue is scheduled for later next year. So plan B, worst case scenario, we would be conducting 30th and Forest Trail to get 30th and 41st together. But we'll still include it in the bid package that's coming out next month. In the event that we do get permits, we can get it constructed with the Forest Trail improvement project. So that's still pending, but I did want to give you all what we're thinking about mitigating how those new developments.
Please tell me those oysters are not gonna be on the back of our phones.
This is the mitigation project. That's one option that they're being very creative about what kind of projects OCRM would entertain. Those are still in very early on discussions. And after we get word from OCRM, whether they would approve that kind of project, we have to do the cost benefit analysis versus purchasing credits or spending the money on the project and see what makes sense. So that's still in progress.
I mean, they're good filter feeders for cleaning the water and stuff, but not for eating.
All right, next slide. So this is not included in your packets, just we added it today, so we have it up here. We've been talking about the cost of the project, how those have gone up, and the estimates that we used for borrowing money for the construction of this project. Those numbers are from late 2019, early 2020, things have changed. And I've asked Thomas and Hutton to provide updated pricing for 30th Avenue and 36, which are the ones that are hopeful to start constructing later this year, and the Waterway Boulevard elevation project. So you can see here the original estimates plus updated estimates. These updated estimates have a 25% contingency embedded in it, so they're a little bit elevated, more than normal, but we are seeing almost a double, 100% increase. in those numbers. These are based off pricing that they've received from current projects that have been are being bid in the, past couple months. We're being very conservative. We'll know very soon how these numbers compare to bids when we get them back in September, October. But in planning for the future and understanding what our gaps are, and the chair will be entertaining a discussion later on about what options do we have to fill that gap, if we have a gap. I just wanted to talk about, again, original estimates, updated estimates, and where we are currently. We borrowed $3.5 million based on the original estimates. And clearly we're seeing that might not be enough to do the construction of all three.
Desiree, some of us can't see that chart.
Okay,
Can
I
you
can-
kind of help us?
Sure.
The part I'm hanging on is 100% increase.
Or could we get a printout for our later discussion so that we can, is that possible?
okay. can we do
Ah.
that? Thank you. So the original estimates for the 30th Avenue outfall was 818,000. The updated estimates, it's approximately 1.6. The 36th Avenue was 720. The updated estimate, it's 1.4. And these are numbers that have been provided by Thomas and Hutton, both of them. We don't have updated estimates on 41st Avenue yet, but if we just extrapolate and assume that the same thing would happen, for discussion purposes, we doubled it here. I find very hard to believe that it's gonna be a $3.3 million for one outfall. But again, until we bid this out and get updated numbers, we won't know for sure. But just for discussion purposes, we have a total of $6.3 million for three outfalls. We added here the Waterway Boulevard elevation project, 900,000. We have a total of $7.2 million project. To that, we're adding a 10% contingency. Even though these numbers have built-in contingency in it, we added a 10%, which is what we typically do when we're budgeting for these projects. We're at 7.9 million. Less bond proceeds on hand, 3.5. We have a potential gap of $4.4 million if these estimates hold true.
So Phil,
Well,
go ahead. I'm sorry. Deb.
well, you can see at the bottom, just so that everybody, those that can't see, oh, there you go. Thank you, John. We have potential funding available. We'll be talking about that later on. We're going to have funds from the American Rescue Plan. We have a very healthy surplus this year. And I also want to mention that we have been pursuing pretty aggressively grant opportunities. We've had a couple of meetings now with different consultants that have been successful in projects through FEMA, EPA, HUD, and working on proposals with them so that we can, again, aggressively pursue grant funding. So this doesn't contemplate any of that. We have submitted applications, grant applications to Charleston County through CTC and TSC. And again, none of this budget doesn't contemplate any of those potential funding opportunities, which we can't guarantee and can't really plan for, but would be certainly available to us to pursue.
So Phil, I mean, the grant things are interesting. I'm more interested in the chronic issues that we have of, getting with a contractor and then seeing this massive change, right? We don't, and I'm not offering as criticism to city staff, but 100%, I understand costs going up, understand scarcity of contractors, right? But this is so mind blowing. And the answer isn't simply to leap to, we can find the money somewhere else. The answer is, what happened? How do we get 100% increase in this time frame? And we leap to, well, no problem, we're going to get other money. I'd like to understand what's driving 100% increase and what we do. you know, it's interesting going through the other budget slides and saying, you know, we're okay on the dock expense. We're only okay because we absorbed hundreds of thousands of dollars of contingency money, leaving us only a couple $100,000 left. But the answer isn't always, let's just build in contingency on top of either bad planning or bad contractor estimates. But boy, I tell you, when I don't know others' reactions, but when you're 100% off, there's just something that just, you know, I have a real difficult time with it.
So let me address a piece of that. So this first column where you see the 818, 719, 1.6, I mean, those are almost 2-year-old bids. So that's piece one. Piece two, and Kevin, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I mean, again, we are in unprecedented times for product cost, labor cost, and anything else that's going on with any kind of construction project. So 2-year-old bids, unprecedented price increases. Again, Randy, so now the 1.6, the 1.4, and certainly the 3.3 are updated estimates. The 1.6, 1.4, we will have real live RFP'd bids this fall to have it to nail a number, maybe less than that. I mean, this is Thomas and Hutton throwing another dart
So,
at a cost estimate.
so Phil,
And
just,
again, let me just
yeah.
finish this comment real quick. And if you remember Desiree's update, I mean, how many permits, I mean, this complexity of this project has gone skyrocketing
Yeah.
from a few permits to all the acronyms that we knew we were going after to, 14 to 20-ish permits from various agencies around local and national level. So I hear you. I mean, nobody's happy with the numbers, but it's just where we are.
well,
right now.
it's just, you know, it's just sort of basic negotiating, right? When you put something out that says, this is what we're anticipating, and then we follow with a bid, and we don't believe that the bids are going to be high because we've already said, by the way, here's, you know, how we're going to fill in the blanks. I think we get an anticipated outcome that the bids are going to be high. And, you know, I think our encouragement should be really competitive bid practices and assume that, you know, we don't have all this other potential funding, that we've been trying to manage a project to a budget, not to an overabundance of printing money. It just, again, it's, like I said, I understand costs have gone up. I
Yeah.
understand it's 2 years and all that, but you know, these kind of numbers are just simply unbelievable.
Yeah, and I think I'd save the arm wrestling until we get actual bids in this
Yeah.
fall personally. Because again, this is Thomas, same entity did the 818 and the 1.6 and the 719 and the 1.4, and those are based on best guesses of where we sit. The hard part about these projects is they're big, they're complicated, they're time consuming, and from the time you incubate to the time you go to market to get money to the time you bid, I mean, it's just, we're talking years worth of time here. And again, I'm not trying to explain away anything. I just think in 90 days, we're going to have a very solid number to put up against that 1.6 and 1.4. And, then we may be in an arm wrestling match to some degree. But right now, to me, we're still dealing with guesstimates, pretty good guesstimates from Thomas and Hutton. But again, we're getting ready to have a competitive bid situation launch in about 30 days. That'll give us a real number.
Well, and I too, certainly equally surprised and still,
Oh, sure.
still digesting the new estimates and why we got there. I don't want to bring a problem to you all without solutions for you all to consider. If the goal is to get this project done and those bids come back early, I want to be able to have an intelligent conversation with you all about what our options are, if that is the case. Not, agreeing necessarily or justifying, I guess, the differential in those bid estimates. I'm sorry, those cost estimates from Thomas and Hutton.
And these original estimates were done well before COVID,
Correct, 29.
COVID situation.
That is correct.
Kevin.
So this competitive bid process, that begins right away, and we'll have a 90-day window.
Yeah,
We
we've got a
receive
timeline.
bids.
That's,
Next slide.
next slide.
Thank you for that, Zachary.
Okay.
So this is the schedule that we have for the bidding and the construction of the 30th in Forest Trail. Our plan is to issue and finalize the bid and advertise it on September 7th. Then have a pre-bid meeting with contractors that are interested in the construction of the work. We'll make it mandatory. We'll know exactly who's going to be bidding by the time that we meet with them that day. We'll have a deadline for questions first week of October, then the bid opening mid-October, October 15th. That way we'll have about a little bit over a week, 10, 11 days between receiving the bids and city council having your October meeting. This means that we would be potentially skipping public work. So that's just, if we want to be able to meet this deadline, we could go straight to Ways and Means or entertain a special public works meeting before Ways and Means. That's something that I was going to chat with you, Councilmember Ward, as we plan for the agenda next month. Then we would be issuing a notice to proceed December 1st and expecting final completion, substantial completion in August and final completion in September.
Well, yeah, that part of it there, I just, I'm like Randy, and I'm sure some of the others here. I mean, this number is staggering based on what we had as original estimate. I mean, double, and I know that this is, maybe Thomas and Hutton used a swag method to come to this. I don't know. I hope they did. I hope this competitive bid process is very competitive, and we see something that's a lot more affordable than what we've got here as an estimate. That's all I can say, because this is really mind-blowing in terms of how it rapidly, or over a 2-year window, in spite of COVID and everything else, how it just basically is assumed to be doubled.
You know, we're very fortunate to have on city council a person who's in private development and knows how to get competitive bids. When you're doing bidding with government agencies, it's like that boardwalk down the front beach. I could have built a massive house for the cost of that boardwalk.
Yep.
So hopefully Councilmember Popson will show us some very competitive bidding companies for stuff like this.
Absolutely, be happy to help. And I think, I mean, the craziness is still out there, but like lumber is slowly coming down. And they started all this, so hopefully copper and all this other craziness is gonna start coming down. So I think time, extended time is our friend, and that some of this stuff will start coming back down to normal.
In regards to what Jimmy said, that front beach project down there, it came in the drainage, not drainage, but the dredging. Oh, a few years back, that came in double. So I've seen it before. I mean, I don't know what happened. I guess those times were unusual also, but it just seems like a pattern.
One more quick, since he said dredging. You know, we're gonna have a major problem when it comes to our wildlands dredging in the future, and that there are no spoil sites available. The Army Corps is not allowing you to use the spoil sites unless we take out 125% of the material that's in those spoil sites. So you talk about double, it's gonna triple. This food for thought for the future.
Any
Other-
questions about the about the timeline? So we'll move on to an update about the small but high impact internal projects. Those have been completed. Milling and paving are in progress, and final inspection and the walkthrough is scheduled when the paving is complete. The 34th Avenue and Hartnett Boulevard project, I added it here. It's not necessarily part of the $500,000 chunk of money that we're using for these 5 projects, but wanted to give you an update that that's been completed, and even paving has been completed, I believe, by the time we finish this on Friday. I received good news this morning from our folks. Douglas and Robert went out there to look at this area this morning after this rain, and it was blowing dry. So it worked out well. We were so excited celebrating in my office, which is so funny, the things we get excited about. But it was so good to hear that it worked very, very well. And the areas that used to flood are, didn't flood. And this morning was pretty brutal, all that rain that we got. So just wanted to share that good news with all of you. And then the next slide, no updates on this. We talked about the overhead to underground electric conversion. Still working through the engineering agreement that will kick in the work that they need to do to fully design the project. If there are no questions, that's all I have. Thank you, John.
John, we've got yet another presentation, if you've got that one keyed up. So our old business is discussion of options for allocation of fiscal 21 positive net result and the American Rescue Plan funding allocation. John, if you can. In committee, you have a hard copy sitting in front of you. For a second to get this up for anybody that may be watching. Oh, we had all this worked out today.
One more minute.
Yeah, just email us.
The church is right behind her. You know her.
Yep.
My fault. I take full ownership. How
Look
about
how
that?
copy that and put it back there. I'm impressed.
Y'all needed a little break, I could tell, after
that
that
one's on
drainage. All right, should be up in a minute.
Our heart's still not started yet, so we're okay.
There you go.
Great, thank you. So this conversation, again, we've had American Rescue Plan topic on for quite a while. There's still no change as far as timing of funding. That's still sitting at the state level that hasn't been released yet. So go ahead and go to the next slide, John, if you don't mind. So we've got two tranches of money that we to talk about. You've heard Debbie and Desiree both talk about the general fund surplus for fiscal 21 will be roughly 2.2 million. numbers will shake out in the next 30 days to have a final number there. We've got the ARP money of also roughly 2.2 million. And let's talk about options that we have with that. John, next slide. So the fiscal 21 surplus first. Again, roughly 2.2 million. We've got $500,000 coming in from the county tax payment. Again, even those are restricted funds. We can certainly use them for a few of the projects that are listed on the page on the bottom here. But I wanted to have, instead of just making a default decision to put our money into the capital projects fund, although that may be where we wind up given the topic tonight, but I thought it would be beneficial just to pause for a moment and look at some other options that are out there that we could use for this surplus money this year. So Debbie, Desiree, and myself are all suggesting that we leave a portion of it in the general fund balance, roughly 10% of whatever the final number shakes out to. We've got some debt out there that we could certainly take a look at reducing. If you look at the few pieces of debt that we have, one's coming due, the rec center's coming due in 2023. Fairly low rate, only about $15,000 in interest that you would save if you paid that off early. Right now, fire station number 2, current rate's 1.88%. It comes due in 2026. You can see our annual interest costs there, about $23,000. The ladder truck, again, current rate 1.83, due in 29. Annual cost there is about $12,000. When I say cost, that's annual interest cost, not principal and interest. But we could pay cash as opposed to lease the engine pumper truck that we're going to talk about here in a little bit tonight. But we have a proposed rate on that of 1.6%, due in 9 years. Public safety building is not eligible for early repayment based on the bond proceeds back in the day. So obviously phase 3 is a piece of puzzle that we need to have, and you've seen those numbers already from Desiree, from the difference between original estimates and potential cost that's coming. Waterway path, the wage and comp survey results, you'll recall we had $131,000 put into the fiscal 22 budget as a line item, not knowing what those adjustments were going to be when they came out. We still don't have a final number on that yet. We also have another $172,000 in the budget for fiscal 22 for personnel restructuring within the fire department. And specifically to the wage and comp survey, we talked about phasing that in potentially. We could make a decision to do something differently once we have the final numbers on that yet, but that's still at the personnel committee level. And then an option is also to put it into disaster recovery. Our current balance there is about 3 million-ish, rough numbers. So again, I just wanted to have some conversation about other options as opposed to just go into the capital surplus, capital projects budget. So I don't know if there's reaction conversation you want to have. What I'd love to do at the end of the day on this particular bucket of money is have a recommendation to go to council next week, Mayor, so that we can wrap up the audit whenever they're ready. Ryan.
I think Randy and I were personnel today discussing this, and I think the way that I would like to look at it is perhaps put the money towards those things that we've already invested our time and effort into. While the rec center, fire department, all that stuff, I'd love to pay off debt, but right now that's not really a problem that really have to tackle with. I think the amount of money that we put into drainage issues, and then seeing those costs go up, and the amount of time and effort and money that we put into the wage and compensation study is really kind of focused on those two things first. And that's where I'm going with it. And it just makes sense to me. I mean, we've already put a lot of time. I'd hate to walk away from those two things, not just because we don't have the funding for it.
Randy.
Yeah, I was just going to put I'm the one that brought up the debt reduction, and I did a specific purpose. Anytime you've got interest below 2%, I don't think it's a really incredibly bright idea to go pay off that debt, but I thought it was worth putting here as an option. And I will tell you, we had a good personnel committee meeting. I think there's good sound recommendations on investing, and as Ryan said, some things that we just simply need to do. So agreed.
Yeah, I'd like to go on record to agree with just what Ryan and Randy just said. I mean, with the debt being that low, which particular items, just let it be. I mean, just let it run and let's pay it off as it's due, and really look at the drainage issues and also wage and comp survey. That's where I'm at.
Susan.
Yeah, I largely agree with drainage, and not only, I want to make sure we're staying competitive with salaries because of the escalation that we're seeing in the workforce. So not just keeping pace, but being proactive. And
We are.
but that might take more money than what we've allocated, given how fast things are going right now. And then as long as as we talk about drainage, we're including the Waterway Boulevard Path
Absolutely.
project, which, while it wasn't specifically noted, has gone up 50% instead of 100%, if that's any better. But that is just so overdue. And if we can get the bonus of having some protection from drainage as we go along with it, that would be good. And, even if we could throw in some benches, like those nice pictures, maximize what we can do with that path as far as an asset for our
Yeah.
community.
Use and functionality. Mayor?
I think wage and compensation to me is probably at the top of the list. I'm looking around at all the communities right now, and I look at Mount Pleasant, their fire department, lawsuit coming up over salaries, and we've got an incredible fire department, police department, and we've got manpower issues. And I think we need to recognize the people to keep us safe. And Public Works, Recreation, City Hall. I mean, so again, it goes across the board. I can't say that any stronger.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do, if you're okay with it, is just kind of drop some percentages in for next week when we get to council, and we can, again, more just to close out the audit more than anything, if we could leave 10% in the general fund, move 90% to capital projects, decide how to spend the money later to all these pieces you all have just talked about. That's what I would recommend that we take to council next week and do. So I'll make that in a form. We do need a vote to take this to council next week. So I'll make that in the form of a motion that we leave for the fiscal 21 surplus, leave 10% in our general fund balance and move 90% to the capital projects fund, and to be decided how we spend that money later.
Second.
Jimmy?
I have an amendment to that, please. I'd like to create a reserve of $50,000, hopefully to hire a consultant and to look out for the island's interest at the State House in Columbia. So it would take it off that would just change the amount that would be, the
Capital
percentage, I don't know what that would be.
Yeah. Yeah. Do we need a separate percentage or not or a separate dollar amount to go after this? Or I know we had talked about this before.
He said 50,000.
Yeah. But we had talked about this in the form of either just making a budget overage if we decided to go down this path, right? To have a
Would be a limit.
lobbyist, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, 'cause
unbudgeted.
we don't have it in the budget.
Understand.
And well, the legislature's coming back in session in January, right? And we don't really know what they might have in store for us.
Maybe coming back a lot sooner here shortly.
I wish they'd come back to take care of this next bucket of money.
That's
I
my
talk about.
amendment.
I'll second it, but do you want it as like a fixed number, or do you want a percent number? Is that what you're talking about?
I wanted a percentage on the bigger two buckets. If we need to carve out 50, that's fine.
Okay,
To do
perfect.
something like that.
Okay,
So under discussion under that, so Jimmy, this is something that could possibly get us money by having somebody up there to
Yes,
watch out for us,
watch out for it.
such as Folly Beach does.
Right, just like Folly Beach and many municipalities in South Carolina do it also. You and Desiree were going back and forth to Columbia so many times the past year. We need somebody to watch what's going on and the process as it's going through. Instead of being caught flat-footed on some things that just it seems like it's already done before we even realize it.
Additional question on that. That's an ongoing, right? I mean, if we go down this path, it's not, we're gonna do this one time. This is really a change in city behavior to make sure that somebody's looking out
Folly
for this.
Beach says, excuse me, sir, Folly Beach, I talked to a friend of mine, a council member out there, and she said they look at it every year, but they decide to keep it going.
Yeah, and to Jimmy's point, I mean, that would be a budget item that we would need to obviously consider for.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do it
23.
as a one time. That's what I'm
Right.
asking.
Susan?
So two questions in regard to what Councilmember Ward was saying. We did increase budget for public relations. Does that cross over into, that's, okay.
no.
And then also, could you review where personnel and salary fits into what you were recommending in terms of,
Yeah, again, all I'm doing is moving our surplus out of general fund. We'll decide how we're gonna spend it later, really
Okay.
just for an audit purpose, just to get us closed
Okay.
out and.
okay, so the fact
So-
that it's moving to capital budget doesn't mean that it could.
Correct.
get
It can be
moved.
moved
Okay,
at any point in
that's
time.
great.
Still on restrict.
Yeah, but I think to Jimmy, if I can make an amendment of your amendment, I'll crown you, I'll king you. If we could do 10% plus 50,000 in the general fund and
Okay.
earmark this 50 for legislative efforts in Columbia, that's
Yeah,
all
that's
right.
fine.
And move the remaining to capital project.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll withdraw my amendment. I just assume clean it up and withdraw the amendment, just go with Philip.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that up.
So I think, Ryan, would you draw?
Yeah, yeah, and I'll second Phillips.
And Nicole, where are you?
I'm
So we're
counting
gonna
on
take,
that.
all right, so let's just restate, just to make sure we're clear. So we're gonna take the fiscal 21 surplus of roughly 2.2 million and move 10% plus 50,000. We'll leave it in the general fund. Move the remainder to the capital projects fund.
And that is
An amendment.
an amendment made by you, seconded by,
Ryan. Can you amend your own motion?
only because you have withdrawn your motion and withdrawn your second.
Yeah. I think we're procedurally
And-
good.
and Philip, Mayor,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you for next week's extended meeting.
Sure. Can I add another one to you? Any other discussion? Yes, sir.
I'd like to say one thing here. I'm definitely in favor of a consultant. I think last year we got blindsided on a few things. We had it to go over again. I mean, if we had somebody there that knew what was going on before we got blindsided, then it probably could have saved us a lot of time and money.
We're going to vote on the amendment
Yes.
first.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. Now back to the original.
You want to restate it just for the. fun of
Well,
it?
no, there's nothing to restate because that amendment just amended the original. So
Okay,
the
all right.
a motion as amended. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. Last page of this presentation is the American Rescue Plan. Again, there's no updates as far as timing of money. We're hopeful one may flow our way. We'll get it in 2 tranches. We've got hopefully one this year and one next year. We will have until 2026 to spend the money. And there's a laundry list of things that are eligible or not. Guidance from the US Treasury. And again, some of the ideas here are phase 3 drainage, the Waterway Boulevard project. We had some conversation, Debbie, Desiree and I, about Wi-Fi infrastructure, which I thought was a great idea, but we're not eligible for that based on the Treasury guidelines as far as what your current speeds are based on what you're trying to get to. So we took that off, and then we just throwing out options here, some type of joint project with the sewer expansion, but I don't know that our money is going to get past the first 2 bullet items, so I'm not sure it's worth the conversation.
I just wanted to help the mayor add to his agenda, but we did have discussion at the MASC meeting that cities in general were going to adopt resolutions, non-binding, to send to the state legislature to let them know that we were in total disagreement with them holding on to funds that should have been distributed to cities of our size. Mayor, can we consider having that? I know it doesn't give us any teeth, but Desiree, maybe did other communities following that meeting act on that and let everybody know how happy we were with their inaction on moving this money?
The communities were certainly encouraged to take that action. I do not know which councils have entertained resolutions. Certainly something that we can.
Just a thought. I know you want to make the meeting longer.
Well, I am having the pleasure of riding to Edisto with Mayors Goodwin and O'Neill on Friday. So that
Yeah,
will be
okay,
discussed.
thank you.
Let me say one thing on that too. I know MASC after that meeting went on record and made a plea for those funds to be brought in by the governor. And it basically fell on deaf ears. That's been 2 to 3 weeks ago. So nothing's moved on that since then.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to new business. Item 7A, consideration of approval of purchase of replacement engine 1002 in the amount of $521,848. And you can see where that's funded there. We can have a motion and a second. We'll have a conversation about it.
Second.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I
You-
didn't catch you. Mayor.
Mayor and Jimmy Ward.
Thank you.
Yep. So you recall, these first 3 items are kind of a package deal, if you will. We're voting on them separately, but it all has to do with equipment and the funding of that equipment. So this first item, we had looked at originally doing a refurbish of our existing truck that you've had in your package, information around why that's not financially feasible. So we're looking at buying a demo for this amount with some additional equipment in a minute, so.
Yeah, so this item was approved by council in November when the city submitted a letter of intent to the manufacturer saying that we want this demo truck and they'll have the ability to equip and add certain features that our folks needed. The number that we budgeted was $525,000, like the Chair Pound said, it's in the budget as a municipal lease, which we'll talk about that in a minute. But the actual cost is a little bit lower than that. It's $521,848 just for the truck. So we do need a motion and a recommendation to council so we can get it finally approved and received. I mean, it's almost ready, right?
Discussion?
Yeah, a little bit of discussion.
Yep.
A lot of times these trucks, when we buy them, come here and they're not always what we expected to be. We got 2 battalion chiefs back there. Who could maybe give us a little bit better background on that. And I hate to do it to you, but I hear it sometimes when I go by the station that, sometimes we didn't get what we always bargained for. Can I put somebody on the spot? I'm sorry, Roger. I know you're gonna hit me later. I let you ride my bicycle during the battle.
Oh, I don't think so.
My bike's a joke, by the way.
It gets you through. It's fun. I'm Battalion Chief Eagle. And even though the word demo is on this truck, this is a brand new truck. So when they start building a truck, they design a truck. And the truck we picked out is one that Safe Industry had, and we could modify it enough to meet our needs. We added some safety features. We wanted a low hose bed, and the truck had all these things on it. We did not put a generator on it because of LED lights. That saved us some money. We tried to keep the cost low, but we also wanted all the safety features. But basically, when a truck is ordered, and Safe Industry had 2 trucks, the other truck, we just couldn't modify to meet our needs. It's like a placeholder in line. And at the time when they ordered it, we latched onto this truck and we did some modifications to it to make it ours. And the truck is actually finished. The truck is sitting up in Sumter right now. Beautiful truck. Looks just like the truck 1001, which is the ladder truck. But there are a few little modifications we want done. When the truck comes here, we want to be able to put it in service as quickly as possible. So there's a few things that the dealer, Safe Industry owns FES, which is Fire Equipment Sales and Service. They bought them a few years back, 3 or 4 years back. So all of it's done under this umbrella. But the truck is actually what we need to replace engine 1002. We looked at refurbing it, and after looking at it, it just wasn't financially feasible.
So Roger, can I add to the specific question? So you guys have already seen the truck.
Yep.
So we've had some eyes on it, that we know what we're getting. We got another site visit before we'll take ownership of it.
We
Something I feel-
actually went down to Florida and did an inspection on it beforehand. There were 3 modifications that were done to it down there because it was cheaper and more cost effective to do down there. We had the lower steps added because we've had injuries due to people stepping off the trucks. There was a switch that was modified, so it was more functional. And what was the other one?
But you're getting what you want.
Yeah, Mayor, is that?
Yeah,
is
yeah,
that-
yeah, it is.
Other, Raj, why don't you stay there, because we're gonna have you on this second
Oh,
piece
the
too. Other
exhaust.
yeah.
The exhaust. was
Other-
turned down.
discussion on truck itself at this point. Nicole?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm late. May I ask? a
Sorry, Jimmy, sure,
question?
sorry.
Would you please state for the record for people reading the minutes and people maybe watching at home that all of these items are budgeted?
So this particular item, to that comment, the municipal lease and our 22 budget, capital projects on page 19, item 45.
Well, thank you.
It's the only thing that didn't double.
We don't have it yet.
Oh,
You're driving them off.
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan,
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith. Aye. Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. Item B, consideration of approval of purchase of self-contained breathing apparatus in the amount of $286,594 and other add-on equipment for pumper truck in the amount of $57,000. Again, all budgeted items, and you can see where those are funded from. So if we can have a motion and a second, we'll have some discussion.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
So I'll
Go ahead.
I'll just go ahead and sort of explain this. So the city budgeted in FY22 for the replacement of the self-contained breathing apparatus. That is something that the city has been saving for so that we can get them all replaced this year. We did issue a request for bids for this particular equipment. We received 2 bids and the one that we're recommending was the lowest bid. I included those bid tabs and bids in the packet. The reason why we would like to purchase the self-contained breathing apparatus and the other equipment that is budgeted is included in the FY22 budget. You can see that in one of the schedules that is in your packet, is because we have the ability to take advantage of a provision in the law where fire trucks are exempt from sales tax. They only pay $300. And there is a provision there for other equipment that is purchased with the truck to be eligible for that benefit. Basically, we would be saving a lot of money paying sales tax. So this is something that the fire department brought up to my knowledge in an effort to be conscious and save as much money as possible. If we purchase it all together, then we would be saving, I think it's upwards of $60,000 in sales tax by doing that. And I included the 1-pager from the Department of Revenue, just so that y'all know this is very much kosher, plain and, I'm sorry. It's legitimate and it's something that we have used in the past.
I don't think so.
No?
I don't think we ever used it, other than maybe some loose equipment, but
Okay.
nothing major like this.
Well, this would save us a lot of money, and that's the reason why we have included it in the agenda as a separate line item. But we would be purchasing it with the.
Philip, quick question.
Refresh my memory, when's the last time we replaced this equipment?
The SEBA stuff. All right, so let me explain the SEBA's a little bit. We used to have a mishmash of stuff when I first started. Now, I've been here almost 26 years. So we used to have MSAs and SCOTs and all that. Initially, we went to something called Survivair. And they were great, but we were going to go with Survivair again. But the new product we did not like after we got some. We switched to MSA The problem we ran into is in the past, we would replace 4 or 5 a year. And that presented a problem because we didn't have like equipment. So what we're trying to do now is we're going to purchase everything at once. So everything we can plan out in the future. Everything expires, all the cylinders expire at 15 years. There's nothing we can do about it. You can extend them another 5 years. But by the time you do that, you're spending this almost as much as you would to buy a new cylinder. So what we'd like to do is buy them all at once, and we'll plan for in the future to buy them again all at once.
Right,
So-
I understand, I appreciate that, explanation, but I'm aware of all of that.
Right.
But I don't need to put Ryan and Jimmy on the spot, but I seem to remember that a few years ago, wasn't 15 years ago, that we did the same thing.
Piecemeal.
We
No,
did. Yes, sir, we did. Piecemeal.
we did, it was never a big number like this?
No, sir. We have never replaced, and this number is down considerably from what we had before.
I think what you're thinking of is that we've been planning for this. We've been setting aside money for several years. We've had this conversation before. but
Right.
It was in the context of
Okay.
setting money aside.
That just seems like I just heard, and that's where I was getting mixed up. I appreciate your explanation. But I know we heard this from Chief Graham several years in a row.
Right.
And, but we never actually did get the equipment. Never spent it.
And I don't know, you may be also thinking, Councilmember Ward, about the radios.
No,
That was a big
I was thinking about the
purchase.
police department, yeah.
that we did together.
Not the radio.
Randy?
Just quick findings. So this is all capital equipment, right? Is it all being considered as part of the lease, the next subject, or are we treating this separately?
We'll be talking about, that's certainly an option. So once
Okay.
you approve the purchase, then we can talk about how we can finance.
I'm just looking at 1.6%, and that just looks really attractive.
Yeah, we thought so too.
Thanks for refreshing my memory.
Other comments, questions? Nicole?
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan. Councilmember Bell. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. So the third piece of this puzzle, Randy, to your comment, consideration of municipal lease for financing of the purchase of the replacement engine 1002 pumper truck. Again, in your material, you have 4 bids that you saw there. BB&T was the lead with the 1.6% rate and a 9-year term. So if we can have a.
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Anything you want to add?
As you can see, we asked as an alternate in the event that we wanted to consider financing the whole, the truck and the equipment, same rate. But that's, again, a consideration. I'm not sure if the motion is to approve just the fire truck for the lease, or we want to entertain a
I think we
conversation.
probably need an amendment to the motion.
We do.
I will
Okay.
make an amendment to the motion to include the other capital equipment.
Second.
Questions,
It's
discussion?
1.6, how do you not do it?
Exactly. We'll do the amendment first, Nicole.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. And then back to the original
Motion
motion.
amended. Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you.
I was wondering if there's any way we could throw more equipment on that fire
I'm trying
truck.
to figure out.
Can it hold drainage equipment?
Right.
We could do some audio
Thank you
visual
for being
in
here.
here. Next item D, we heard the presentation earlier. This is consideration of award of a contract to Davis and Floyd for a comprehensive island-wide drainage master plan in the amount of $248,000. Again, a budgeted item. You can see where it is notated there. We have a motion.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion from the earlier presentation? Nicole?
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. Last item E, discussion and consideration of property insurance options for the new Marina docks. Again, a budgeted item that you can see listed there. Desiree had a late breaking handout. We got our final bid in this afternoon on this particular piece. And I don't know if John has that or not, but
Yeah,
Okay,
it
that's all right.
doesn't, but we'll update it and add it to the agendas and minutes page on the website for everyone to see. This is a very busy schedule and I don't want to go through each one. I just want to show you all of our efforts at trying to secure property insurance for the new Marina docks, all perils, including earthquake, wind, and flood perils as well. So we have received a complete, your previous schedule only had a portion of the maritime program group option only for the first phase, the 2.5, which is what we're ready to turn over to Brian very soon. And we have released them to then work on our behalf with Markel, which was a different insurance company that was willing to provide coverage for the remaining 1.2 for phase 2 and phase 3 of the drainage project. So you can see here that we have a total annual cost for those premiums to provide coverage for $4 million worth of replacement value for the new docks at $125,778. We budgeted 150,000, so we're coming below that number. We received the quotes and all the documentation today, yesterday afternoon. We have since sent it to our partners at MASC, SMRF, who provide coverage for our other buildings. We are by no means insurance experts, so we want them to take a look at those coverages, make sure that there are no blind spots, that we're fully covered there. They gave us back some questions that they're recommended that we ask of the agent, which we will conduct that. So, barring anything coming out, that's surprising, we would be moving forward with a recommendation to you all that y'all approve moving forward with Maritime Program Group. This is the same company that provides insurance for the city marina. So they are a local group, have a really great rating in the AM Best website. We've received those documentation, so we're reviewing that as well. But yeah, that would be our recommendation. It's significantly lower than some of the others that we've received at 230, 260,000. We had a conversation at Real Property about the city pursuing a plan so that we can get out of this business. And we can, if what makes most sense is for us to self-insure rather than spending this money every year, then how do we get there? And then I'll let Philip sort of entertain, he's going to lead that discussion shortly. And we have a couple of options, but certainly for now, short term, in the next, couple of years, we definitely want to make sure that our assets are well protected while working towards a plan where we self-insure and we either reduce the replacement, the value that we're insuring as we continue to save and get to a point where we would be able to pay for a replacement in the event of a catastrophe. So I wanted to just make that in the form of recommendation to council, and then y'all would be voting on this final next week.
Deductible?
So yes, the deductible is 5% or 5% or a minimum of 100,000. It's 5% of the, the cost.
Thank you.
We did receive an alternate today. It's on here. Yes, we could save 20,500 per year if we increase the windstorm deductible to 500,000. So that's an option.
Brand new docks. I'm watching all these storms out there. I'd hate to lose anything right now. Just keep it.
And I think, just to lead into the next conversation before we have this vote, I mean, I don't think anybody's suggesting anything for the next year other than the 5-year policy at 125,000 with the deductible that's there and the coverage that's there. And maybe you do that for year 2, maybe year 3, but I think, my opinion is we should start taking money and setting it aside in disaster recovery, earmark it, do whatever you want with it. for specific for the docks, because I mean, 125 is only going to go up from there, obviously, as we walk forward, but let's set that conversation aside for just a second and take care of this first year, Mayor, because I totally agree. We absolutely need coverage for at least this first year from a good financial backed insurance.
So we need a motion on the first year.
Yes.
Yeah, motion to approve.
Yeah, thank
I'll
you.
second.
Other discussion, conversation, comments?
Good job, Desiree, getting this down.
To clarify, that's a motion to approve the 125, correct?
Correct. Thank you, Nicole.
Will they write policies if there's named storms?
So before we vote, just a little clarity on Nicole. Because you have some other questions to ask of this group. Is the motion, should the motion be specifically for the 125 amount, or is there a possibility that that amount is going to change before we bring this? Okay.
No,
Then I'm good.
I don't
Yeah.
expect.
Yeah, we're getting used to things changing.
No, the only thing is, I don't know if, so the motion is to approve the 125 with the 5% or a minimum of $100,000 deductible, not moving forward with the 500,000
Correct.
deductible. Okay,
Absolutely correct.
perfect. Just to clarify. Thank you.
Nicole?
Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Buchanan.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Mayor Carroll.
Aye.
Councilmember Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. So again, thinking about the future, I saw some heads nodding, but let's have just a quick conversation. All we need tonight is to give some direction to staff around if we want to start working towards a self-insured option. Again, I think it's at least another year or two out where you start the split maybe, but again, those are details that we can work with MASC or provider here, Nick. So any thoughts or comments around that? And again, I see heads nodding, but Jimmy?
Well, it's not gonna stay at 125,
Correct.
but if you assume it did, you did a quick math, and after, 4 years, be 500,000, and then another, but it's gonna increase. Insurance agents and cockroaches will be the last thing standing, right? So, yeah, I'm definitely in favor of.
Yeah. And I think, Jimmy, to your exact question, we've got two levers on this, the insured value and the deductible.
Right.
But again, 125 is going to be our low water mark.
I may be saying what you just summarized, but it's not a flip a switch either. We could start insuring, we could self-insure $2 million of it and carry a $2 million policy. So the directive that I would give the city is work on a phased implementation of self-insurance with those two variables.
And these are annual policies, so we'll have the ability to adjust that every
Right.
year as part of that plan.
Because you're not going to have enough to completely self-insure in the year one of self-insurance.
Correct. Susan?
But just based on our escalating cost situation, maybe we need to be thinking about how much replacement is going to cost down the line.
Double.
Yeah.
And that's really the kind of discussion we had in real property, is to, with Desiree, is
Just
to,
what's the value?
exactly, so.
Yeah.
And there are other municipalities doing that as well, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so.
And again, I mean, you only have two buttons to push here, insured value and deductible is really about it. So we can work on phasing and figure out how to get there in short order. Any other comments on that topic? Next item is miscellaneous business. Next meeting, 6 p.m. Tuesday, September 21st. Any other item?
What a great day.
Motion to
Yeah,
adjourn.
yeah.
What a great
All
day.
in favor?
Aye.
Record at 8:03.
It was actually 21st going into 22nd. Remember that?
Yeah, that's right. It was midnight, the 23rd.
Exactly. So we got a little touch of 21st.